Good evening, you're watching TKC Daily, where we make sense of the global events with straight facts and sharp analysis. Coming up on the show, El Salvador's President Bukele says he won't do anything for a man accidentally deported from the United States of America. What does that mean? Then Trump freezes $2 billion in Harvard funding after university says no to his demands. Meanwhile, China orders Boeing jet delivery halt as trade war expands. Also on the show, will Trump impose a martial law type orders in the US soon? Rumors are it could happen on April 20th. And finally, Blue Origin crew safely back on Earth after all-female space flight. Is this a scientific advancement or just another PR stunt? All this is lined up. Let's begin. Imagine this. Your spouse is wrongfully deported to another country, locked inside one of the world's harshest prisons, and then what? Both governments agree he is not coming back despite a Supreme Court ruling. That's exactly what's happening to Kilmar Albigo Garcia, a Maryland resident mistakenly deported to El Salvador. And now, well, El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele says he won't send him back, not even after the US admitted it was, and I quote, an administrative error. So let's understand the whole matter first. Kilmar had legal protection against deportation. He was living in the US with his wife, an American citizen, and their kids. But in a controversial move, he was shipped off to El Salvador's notorious mega prison, where he remains trapped as of now. Bukele brushed off demands to return him, calling the question, and I call, preposterous. Trump officials echoed that, saying it's El Salvador's call now what they want to do. This raises serious concerns. When a legal error like this happens, who's to held accountable? And what message does that send to millions and millions of other immigrants in the country? But this deportation drama is only the tip of iceberg. The real headline isn't just about Kilmar. It's about how Bukele and Trump are turning immigration and incarceration into a global business deal. During their Oval Office meeting, Bukele's first since Trump's return to power, two leaders praised each other and unveiled a disturbing proposal. What's the proposal? Trump wants to send violent US criminals, even American citizens, to prisons in El Salvador. Yes, you heard that right. Trump said some monsters in the US could be shipped overseas if it's legal to prisons like Boycott. That's prison, by the way, that has been widely criticized for its brutal conditions, overcrowded cells, no mattresses, limited water, and almost no legal rights. Human rights groups have already condemned it, but Trump says, I don't see it. Bukele, on the other hand, is cashing in. For every deportee El Salvador receives, the US pays around $20,000 per year. That's millions flowing into Bukele's prison system, which he claims will become financially self-sufficient. But I want to ask, at what cost? At human cost? More than 200 immigrants have already been deported under this plan, and many accused but not proven to be gang members. Bukele defends it as a part of his war on gangs, which has sent around 80,000 people jailed under a never-ending state of emergency in the country. Critics say it's less about justice and more about authoritarian control. And there is more. Trump also hinted at fresh tariffs, this time on pharmaceutical, continuing his economic nationalism agenda. So let me give you the bigger picture here. What's the bigger picture? One man wrongly deported becomes a political pawn. Two leaders shake hands over a system that profits from incarceration. And beneath all the photo ops and praises, families are torn apart, human rights are sidelines, and justice get outsourced. But as for Kilmar, his children still wait, his wife still fight. And both presidents have decided that he's not coming home. When politics turn prisons into profit, who speaks for the people caught in the crossfire? Think about it. When politics start interfering with education, when leaders try to twist universities to match their agenda, you know the future of that country is headed for trouble. That's exactly what's unfolding in the United States of America under the leadership of President Donald Trump. In a dramatic move, the Trump administration has frozen over $2 billion in federal funds for Harvard University. You want to ask why? Well, because Harvard refused to follow a list of sweeping demands from the White House. Demands the Harvard University claims would compromise its independence and core values. What did Trump administration say? The Trump administration says these demands were part of a plan to combat rising anti-Semitism on campuses. But Harvard sees it differently. The demands included changes to hiring practices, admission policies, teaching content, and even reporting students deemed, and please let me quote here, hostile on American values to the federal government. One proposal even required that each academic department be viewpoint diverse. Whatever that means, even I don't understand that. Harvard's president, Alan Garber, pushed back, saying the university cannot and will not allow the government to take over its intellectual space or free speech rights. He said, and I quote him here, although some demands aim to tackle anti-Semitism, he said, most represents direct government control over Harvard's academic life. The Department of Education fired back, accusing Harvard, and I quote, of an entitlement mindset, and insisting that the disruption of learning and harassment of Jewish students on the campuses won't be tolerated. But you see, this clash isn't an isolated incident. Just last month, Columbia University caved under some similar pressure after $400 million in federal funds were pulled. Some student protesters have since been arrested or detained, with concerns rising about how dissent is being punished. Harvard professors have now filed a lawsuit accusing the government of launching an illegal assault on their academic freedom and their free speech. A Harvard historian calls it a groundless and vengeful move, a move that could shatter the Harvard University. But as he puts it, Harvard can afford to resist because freedom of thought isn't for sale. This story isn't just about money, it's about what kind of country America wants to be. One where universities speak truth to power, or one where they are forced to toe the government's line. In the end, the bigger question is, if politics takes over the classroom, what happens to the future of learning itself? Think about it. In a dramatic twist in the US-China trade war, China has ordered its airlines to stop accepting new aircraft deliveries from Boeing, one of America's biggest and most iconic companies. What's the message? The message is loud and clear. China is done playing defense. This move comes just days after President Donald Trump's administration slapped tariffs as high as 145% on Chinese imports, citing national security concerns and unfair trade practices. Beijing didn't sit quietly. In response, China hit back with retaliatory tariffs of up to 125% on American goods, accusing the US, and I quote, of economic bullying and trying to stifle China's rise. But this isn't just about goods in the containers, it's now about jets in the hangars. According to Bloomberg, Chinese regulators have told their national airlines to halt all deliveries of Boeing aircrafts and even avoid purchasing American-made parts and aviation equipment. That's a massive blow to Boeing, which has long considered China a critical market and important market. The move that would cost Boeing billions and billions. Now, it's not just about new planes. China is also considering government support to its airlines that lease existing Boeing jets, especially telling Washington what they're telling. We'll find a way to manage without you. Meanwhile, in a show of strategic defiance, President Xi Jinping is on a multi-country tour across Southeast Asia, rallying support and seeking new trade and aviation partnerships. What's the goal? The goal is very simple: to reduce China's dependency on American exports and build alternative alliances, alternative partnerships. From Vietnam to Malaysia to Cambodia, Xi Jinping is pitching a future where Asia stands more united and less reliant on West. At the same time, the Trump administration has announced a temporary pause in reciprocal tariffs on some allies, But notably, China wasn't offered any real relief. Instead, American officials carved out exemptions for select high-tech goods like semiconductors and like smartphones, but kept pressures on strategic sectors that also included the sector of aviation. And here's the twist: Boeing, one of the symbol of US industrial might, is now caught in the crossfire of geopolitical showdown. Its competitors, Europe's Airbus, might quietly be cheering from the sidelines as Beijing could shift more orders there to the competitors. The skies are no longer neutral grounds. The US-China rivalry is now affecting how and where people fly. And with both sides digging in their heels, the question isn't whether this standoff will cool down or not, it's what's the next industry to get grounded in this war. But one thing is certain: when the world's two biggest economies go to war, not even the skies are safe. Speculation has been swirling around one dramatic possibility. Could President Donald Trump evoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law soon? Well, rumors are pointing to April 20th as the day it could possibly happen. So let me give you a little background. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is a centuries old law that allows the US president to use federal troops or place National Guard units under federal control to deal with large scale civil unrest, protests, or even rebellion. It is one of the most powerful tools available to the president, and if evoked, it could give President Donald Trump the power to send military forces to control the situation within states. This law could eventually allow the US president to bypass civilian authorities and give the military full control in times of crisis. So, what's fueling this buzz? Well, it all started with an executive order Trump signed on his first day in office, which gave him the option to declare such an emergency within 90 days. Now, as April 20 approaches, the speculation about evoking the Insurrection Act is heating up. And while there is no official confirmation, the rumors are not entirely baseless. Now, let's break down what could happen if Trump evokes this law. The Insurrection Act isn't about replacing civilian governments with military rule, which is what martial law does. Martial law essentially puts the military in charge, while the Insurrection Act is about using forces to support and enforce civilian law when it's no longer practical to do so. So you can understand the difference between both. Historically, it has been used during civil disturbances such as the 1992 Los Angeles riots or during the times of national emergency like President Lincoln during the Civil War. However, if Trump does decide to go ahead with this, it would mark a significant moment in the history of the United States of America. He's already been using executive powers in an unprecedented way before, like during the George Floyd protest in 2020, where he threatened to evoke such powers. The use of military forces on the US soil would be a massive step, a big step. As of now, there is no official announcement. As I mentioned earlier, the fact-checking sites like Snopes have pointed out that the rumors remains highly speculative, but with April 20th on the horizon, people are understandably concerned about the future. Could Trump evoke the Insurrection Act? If he does, it would set a new precedent for his executive powers. Pop star Katy Perry and five other remarkable women have safely returned to Earth after a journey aboard Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket, marking a historic moment for space tourism. The crew, which included Perry, Bezos' fiancée, Lauren, CBS presenter Gayle King, former NASA rocket scientist Aisha Bowe, civil rights activist Amanda, and film producer Kiran Flans, reached space on a flight that lasted just 11 minutes but had a profound impact. The flight took them more than 100 kilometers above Earth, crossing the internationally recognized boundary of space. The crew experienced weightlessness and a view of Earth from the space, a perspective that left them deeply moved. As they returned to Earth, their home, cheers erupted inside the capsule, and upon landing, the recovery crew welcomed them with applause. For Perry, It was an emotional moment marked by her kissing the ground and lifting a daisy to the sky, a tribute to her daughter Daisy. This flight also holds significance as the last all-female space mission was more than 60 years ago, 60 years ago, with Soviet cosmonaut Ventela Solo's mission. Since then, women has contributed immensely to space exploration, but this is first all-women crew in the recent history. While this accomplishment, this achievement is undeniably exciting, some critics question the nature of such missions. After all, these flights are commercial ventures, not scientific expeditions. Let me give you what the experts have to say. Dr. Kai, a space policy expert, raised concerns about the high profile of celebrities on such missions, highlighting that, and I quote, celebrities do it for amusement, and get far more attention than professional astronauts who carry out missions for scientific and humanitarian processes or progresses. Despite these criticisms, there are those who see the positive side, especially in how the flight could inspire young girls and women to pursue career in science and space. Gail King, for instance, spoke about the overwhelmingly positive response from the young women that she has got. But at the same time, there is a growing discontent over the exclusivity of the space tourism, with tickets costing up to $150,000 for just one seat. Furthermore, the environmental concerns surrounding rocket launch have not gone unnoticed by many. While Blue Origin claims that its energy engines only produces water vapors with no carbon emissions, experts like Professor Maris warns that a water vapor in the upper atmosphere can deplete the ozone layer and affect the climate even more. So while the mission represents a giant leap for space tourism and gender representation in space industry, it also raises serious and important questions about its sustainability, exclusivity, and environmental impact. Ultimately, it's up to us to decide whether this is a giant step for mankind or just another spectacle for the wealthy few. And that's all I have for you on the show tonight. I will see you tomorrow. Take care and good night.